Newbie Tuesdays, our section on handicapping. Each week we'll take you through 4 fundamentals of handicapping a horse race. There are 4 key fundamentals. They are pace, class, speed, and connections. Each time we go through Newbie Tuesdays, we're going to teach you a little bit about each of those 4 fundamental keys. Brian Nadeau from Horse Player Now joins me, Jeremy Plunk here, as we talk about the first of these fundamental keys, that being pace. Brian, some say pace makes the race. There's a lot more we can talk about down the road. But first off, what does pace mean to you?
Yeah, well, pace is basically how the race is going to be run. Is there going to be a fast pace, a contested pace with a lot of horses involved in towards the front, or is there going to be a slow pace where, things unfold very slow early and then fast late? It's all the dynamics within a race to me.
And in human terms, we're looking at pacing yourself, whether you're a track athlete or a swimmer. You don't want to swim the first 50 meters all out if you've got to go 1,000 meters and
Sure.
that sort of thing. So how you pace yourself, whether you're talking about eating dinner at night or whether you're talking about a horse race, you've got to pace yourself, and that's something that we'll talk about throughout the course of the year. The second key fundamental of handicapping is class, and class is basically how we break down how good horses are. Tell us what your take on class is.
Yeah, class, there's several different levels within racing. You've got claimers, allowance horses, stakes horses, maiden horses, and they all kind of fall in the ladder, so to speak. And obviously the stakes horses are going to be the top class, and claimers are relatively thought to be the lower class. And a lot of this game is horses moving in and amongst different classes, and if they can compete and if they can't compete with a better or lesser animal.
If you're looking at playing in the over 40 league for recreation, you don't want to be in there at 62, you want to try to be in there at 40 years old. And I think that's something that you're looking at. Trainers and owners of horses are trying to find the right class where their horse fits absolutely best. And that's a key fundamental in handicapping. You can identify the class of a race and a class of a horse through the past performances, and we'll share some past performances with you in Newbie Tuesdays throughout the year, and you'll be able to see exactly how to identify that on your own. The third key fundamental we want to talk about is speed, and it sounds simple. Speed is how fast you are, but determining how fast a horse really is and how important that will be in a race is obviously a bigger question than just who's fastest.
Yeah, you can look at the form and see 4 different horses that want to go to the front, but the reality of it is there's probably one in there that is faster than all of them, and if you can identify that, that's a huge angle in when looking at a race, who's the speed of the speed and where they fall in line within each individual race.
Timing is done through automatic mechanisms on the racetrack. Every time a horse passes a timing pole, each fraction of a race is recorded. It's just like if you watch the Olympics and you see the loser going down the course, you can see where they are at different periods. In horse racing, we call those fractions, split times, and those fractions will kind of determine how fast a race is going, and then the final time will be given for the winner. So you can measure a raw time and see how fast a horse is, but a raw time, as you know, Brian, isn't always a determinant of how fast a horse is. A lot of conditions go into developing what that final time will be.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The faster a race is run early, the slower the final time is going to be, but that's not necessarily a drawback on how a horse ran. But, the more energy he exerts early, the less he's going to have late. So that all comes into play when you're looking at the speed of the race and how many horses might want to be involved in the early speed of the race. And A leads to B. The early part of the race is going to lead to the end part of the race and just how fast it might be.
So stacking up 2 horses that ran a mile in 1 minute and 35 seconds could be under different conditions and different situations. So just looking at raw times won't necessarily tell you the speed. The thing that a lot of folks lean on in horse racing since the 1970s and certainly since they became commercialized in the early 1990s are speed figures, and those things kind of take into different effects of how fast or slow the track may have been, how fast or slow the race was early and late, and they put a figure to that raw time and try to evaluate horses in that manner. We'll talk a lot more about speed figures later in the year. It's not necessarily a newbie topic for the first time you jump in, but it's definitely a topic that we'll get to and develop throughout the course of the year. Speed figures very important.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's several different speed figures out there. A lot of them, maybe they look at the overall time of the race. There's pace figures out there that look at the individual pace of the race. And, each different person might have their own set that they like, but there's no doubt about it that in today's racing, they do play an important part, not only in the race, but the betting of the race as well and how people view them.
And our fourth key component here in the handicapping segment, connections. We'll talk about the people who are connected to a horse, those being the human beings, the jockeys and trainers, mainly the most input on a horse, and then also to a lesser extent the owner and the breeder. But when we talk about the connections, give me a little thumbnail. Do people have a chance to see statistics and information on the connections?
Well, I think a lot of times the novices, so to speak, will gravitate towards connections because they're people they've heard of. Everybody's heard of Todd Pletcher or John Velasquez if they've played racing before. So they gravitate towards them, and in the form and in different publications, there are a lot of statistics out there that you can see. This trainer and jockey are 30% together, but when he uses this jockey, they're 5% together. So I think in this day and age of racing, a lot of people gravitate towards connections and the statistics that they use for them.
In any track program and on their TV feeds and such, we'll show you the leaders at each racing meet, who's the top jockeys and trainers, just like standings, like you're watching the Major League Baseball standings, who's leading the division and that sort of thing like that. You can see who the top people are by wins and percentage, and a lot of folks will gravitate towards those because the most successful people win more often than the ones who are not. Those are the four main tenets of handicapping that we're looking at for this week's Newbie Tuesday. We'll be back with more on the program. Stay with us.